12 of Paradise Lost, where Michael is teaching Adam about what the history of the human race is going to be. And he gets to the part with the children of Israel getting the law at Sinai. And Milton has this long part where he uses all this language from the New Testament about these things that they learned from Sinai about worship and the laws and everything are all types and shadows that look forward to the truth, the reality there that is in Christianity. And so he's using the word shadows there in this very traditional Pauline and Christian notion of everything in the Old Testament is a shadow or it's veiled or something, and that then the reality, the light, everything is there in the gospel. So it sort of, it devalues, it really devalues the Mosaic and the Jewish in relationship to the gospel, which are the fulfillment of what those shadows were. Paul will say things like, now we see through a glass darkly, is that same kind of image in I think it's in Corinthians or whatever. Now we see through a glass darkly, then we will see, fully. It's this sense that the reality that you're seeing is shadowed, it's in shade. You don't really see the real thing, but it's a way of basically suggesting there's a relationship between the Old Testament and the New, but devaluing the Old Testament in relationship to the New. About how Eve is, when she's created, she wakes up and she's in the shade. In contrast to Adam, who seems to be like, he springs up and it's like it's in the sunlight and he looks towards God. She's inadequate, like, without him, in a way that's an analogous to, from Milton's point of view, the Old Testament being inadequate without the New. Eve in the shadow, always in the shadow of Adam. Mm-hmm. And I don't know anybody who's talked about that. Bill, don't you steal this idea. That opposition between the darkness and the light, and Milton's invocations of them used when he says, "Hail, holy light," the light which is co-eternal with God, which again suggests the thing that's in shade is less. It's not dark, it's not evil. Indeed, in my blindness, I enjoy in no inconsiderable degree the favor of the deity, who regards me with more tenderness and compassion in proportion as I am able to behold nothing but himself. For the divine law not only shields me from injury, but almost renders me too sacred to attack, not indeed so much from the privation of my sight as from the overshadowing of those heavenly wings which seem to have occasioned this obscurity. Isn't that a great image? It's like the heavenly wings of God, the Spirit of God, has overshadowed him.
My architecture office is the designer for this new student center for the journalism school, and the space is both this cafe space and the student center space behind this wall. And the reason I thought you guys would be interested in this space has to do with the way we designed the ceiling. If you look up at the ceiling of the space, it's a series of perforated panels. The ceiling, though, was designed with a criteria that the sun that's allowed in the space would be, the direct sun would be reduced by 80%, so that there would be only indirect light in here. And we started with a design idea that when you're in this space, you would feel like you were under a canopy of trees, and you would just have the kind of dappled light of the trees and the light through the leaves of the trees onto the ground plane or onto the surface. So when we actually started developing this panel system and the logic for the pattern in it, we were thinking about that quality of space. It's designed to reduce the sunlight, direct sun, by 80%, and it does that through a perforated pattern and a corrugated pattern. So the corrugations are allowing the certain sun angles to come directly in, but blocking other sun angles, so the sun's bouncing off of the surfaces. And then the size of the holes and the openings of the holes are only allowing so much light to come down through into the space inside. If you unfolded this perforated panel, the pattern actually comes from a photograph of clouds that we took, clouds looking straight up in the sky, actually with a satellite in it. And what we did is we took a picture of clouds and we changed that data, that photographic information, into digital information and used the kind of coloration and the colors from the white to the blue and to the shadows of the clouds to transform into a digital pattern that becomes a pattern of this whole ceiling surface. So the ceiling here is actually, this idea about dappled light, and it's actually light as if you were shaded on a cloudy day. We needed shadow. We needed to shade the space in order for the space to perform in a certain environmental way. But we also wanted to explore the aesthetic quality, the kind of qualitative sense of the nature of that shading, the nature of that shadow. So in an architectural project, you might need to have shading or create shadow or depth, maybe for a performance reason, but you also might want to use shadow and shading and depth as for material reasons and for aesthetic reasons, that the texture of a brick or the depth of the window set back or the pattern that's revealed through the use of shadow on a surface and shadows that change start to give the architecture something that you experience differently at different times, which could be quite lovely.
So I'll talk a little bit about the place that I work, which is on the island of New Guinea. It's kind of a notion of the stuff that is left over from people when they're gone, the kind of imprint that people make on the world. It's something that is neither in the present or the past. It's something that's not present, past, future. It's something that is temporally very sticky for people, and it's kind of the shadow of a living person. But Gimme don't use the word shadow. I was trying to translate to think if I could think of a word for shadow, and I can't think of one actually, the Gimme word for it, so I don't think I've ever heard it, or either there's not one. But that's a time when there's something that is not, it's like a shadow. It's something that is not part of a person, but it's the imprint that a person left on the world that's not quite changed into something else yet.
Shadows are really strange objects like holes, which are, so to speak, marginally important for our cognition, in the sense that we do not have a lot of machinery devoted to them, but still there is a lot of machinery somehow. They're not so important as material objects or things that we deal with in everyday life. It's a matter of economy for the visual system, because they're very conspicuous in the visual scene. Shadows are, being a consequence of illumination, they're not stable properties of the environment. So if you start moving objects around, or if the sun moves, or if a light source moves, then the shadow is going to change its position. And that means that they're not stable properties of the environment, and it is obvious that we should not be too much interested in them as properties of the environment. So the visual system uses them to reconstruct 3D structure, but after that it discounts them. And only if you pay attention to them, you then get them back into cognition. My shadow depends upon me, and whatever I do, it should do. So in a sense, it is my slave. It's my servant, or my copy. So it's it doesn't seem to have a soul of its own. But then I cannot do things. I cannot do some special things to my shadow. For instance, I cannot go away from my shadow or detach myself from my shadow. So if I try to do it, is if I'm trying to give a command to the shadow, which is go away or separate yourself from myself, and it doesn't obey. It simply sticks to me. So I cannot go away. There is a sort of resistance of the shadow, which allows us to attribute to the shadow a kind of a soul. There are many interesting behaviors of the shadow we don't know, and we have to pay attention to.